Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. In this video today, I want to talk about the political strategy of Pierre Poilievre and the Federal Conservative Party when it comes to Mark Carney's Liberal budget. Because the Conservatives and the NDP both effectively allowed the Liberals to pass their budget, and it has upset a lot of people online who think that this is somehow a betrayal of Canadians. Why would they let this Liberal government go any longer when they could have technically defeated this budget and gone into another election? I'm going to tell you guys right away, that's stupid. You do not want to be the opposition that forces Canadians into a Christmas election. I know a lot of people are putting attention on Shannon Stubbs, who is one of the two Conservative MPs who didn't end up voting on the budget. People don't care as much about Matt Genereux because he hasn't been around Parliament for weeks and he's the guy who's planning on resigning in the spring. But people have been putting a lot of negative attention on Shannon Stubbs. I know there's a story about how she just got a surgery and that's why she couldn't vote. And people are saying, well, that shouldn't matter. Even if that's true, she should vote anyways. My position here is none of that matters. It doesn't matter. Sorry, you want the Conservatives to look like the Grinch party by ruining people's Christmas holidays by plunging the country into an election when in many parts of the country it's going to be snowing and it's not going to be great for grassroots campaigning at the doors. Obviously, that's really dumb. What we need is we need to let the Liberals have a little bit more rope to hang themselves with, and then you end up calling an election. I do want to get into some stuff around the details of this passing and why it's bad for the Liberals, because they literally had to team up with Elizabeth May to pass this thing. They could have passed it technically without her, but it's very clear that they courted her vote in order to get this thing passed because they obviously would look stupid if they intentionally lost the vote. The Liberals can't trigger the election themselves, or they're the people plunging us into a Christmas election. But they bent over backwards for Elizabeth May, which makes them look really radical. And as we have negative effects coming out of this budget into the future, it's going to be a more opportune time to call an election. But I like to think about politics from a military perspective. If you hang out with me in public, or sorry, not public, I guess in public, but in person, especially behind the scenes in politics, I talk about politics like it's a war going on. Not in terms of we got to fight the enemy, we got to meet them on the battlefield and spill their blood. I mean, in terms of like, you never charge up a hill at an entrenched enemy. You don't have your troops run up a hill towards people who all they have to do is sit there and fire back down at you. That is what would have happened. That's basically the metaphorical scenario of the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Bloc defeating this budget and going into another election. If you're the Conservatives, you want to have a more even ground to fight the Liberals on. You want them to have to charge up a mountain at you, or you want to be able to charge down a hill at them in the valley. And that's what it would be if the Liberals have a terrible economic update, they break another promise, a corruption scandal comes out, and then you call an election. Right now, not enough Canadians are paying attention to know the budget sucks. Does the budget suck? Yes, but perception is reality for so many people, and they don't perceive the budget as being so bad. Now, the polling on the budget is not very good. A lot of people are wary of it, but it's going to take a while for those kind of feelings of apprehension to turn into, I'm not going to vote for the Liberals again. People being a little apprehensive right now and then putting them into a Christmas election is just going to mean that they still are more annoyed with whoever called the election than those who put up the shaky looking budget. Now, the budget's more than shaky, it's terrible. But again, most people aren't going to have digested that right away. And so I can even show you this poll. There are good indicators that this budget is not going to be doing any benefit, it's not going to be helping the Liberals at all. We have this poll out from Abacus data that asks, does the budget make you more or less confident that the federal government has a clear plan to grow the economy, make life more affordable, and protect people from uncertainty? I am more confident than before only scores at 16%. 39% say less confident, 26% say I'm as confident as I was before. Now, yeah, if you add as I'm as confident as I was before and I'm more confident, that's not too bad, but you never know if the confident as I was before line could be people who already thought it was terrible or already thought it was going to be good. And then there was a decent amount of I don't knows. And then when we actually look at the chart on where people are less confident, obviously Alberta is disproportionately high, but BC is quite high. Atlantic Canada is quite high. We have Ontario, 38% people think don't like it, and only 17% do. So this is one of those one of those budgets where it's going to start off at this kind of divisive thing, and it's probably going to become less popular over time as it's not actually delivering the benefits that the Liberals promise. But again, we have to go back to the idea that the Liberals ended up having to court Elizabeth May's vote to pass this thing. This is going to hurt them in the future because they actually can be slapped as being a very radical government, a government who paired up with the most radical member of parliament in order to get their budget across the finish line.
Merci. Ma question.
Thank you. My question is for the Prime Minister.
Agree that it is a deficiency in the budget that our legally binding Paris commitments are not mentioned. Can he confirm here on the floor of this House that in passing this budget, the government is committed to holding to as far below 2 degrees as possible, to funding climate adaptation, to delivering on the nature strategy, and continuing to engage in meaningful Indigenous reconciliation?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for advocacy of the Youth Climate Corps, which is in this budget and which this House can vote for. Vote for the future of this country. Mr. Speaker, this budget puts us on the path for real results for climate, for nature, for reconciliation. I can confirm to this House that we will respect our Paris commitments for climate change, and we're determined to achieve them. I can confirm with this House that, consistent with our Kunming Montreal commitments, the nature strategy will release in the coming weeks. We will build this country strong, sustainable, and pure for future generations.
And this is the Green Party celebrating it. I'm using the Green Party's own clipping of it. The Greens took this as the win, as a win for them. Even though technically Carney didn't need her vote, although he probably in his mind believed that he did need her vote, because they thought they needed the vote, they ended up basically re-embracing every bad Trudeau-era Green policy, and they promised to not get rid of any of them. That's pathetic. Do you think that these people are actually going to be building a pipeline when they just bear-hugged Elizabeth May to get their budget passed? This is something in the future that's going to be hurting the Liberals quite a bit. And I want to jump over now to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives reacting to the budget. Because again, although they didn't trigger an election, it's not hypocritical for them to condemn the budget even though they let it get passed. You kind of have to let it go. You have to let them have their day rather than getting in their way constantly and then calling an election. At some point, you're just going to look like a pest if you don't let the government operate at all. So here is Pierre Poilievre's reaction after the budget passed yesterday. Mark Carney's budget will drive up the cost of living on everyday Canadians, on food, on homes, on everything else Canadians buy. Conservatives demanded an affordable budget for an affordable life. On behalf of the Canadians that Liberals have priced out of food, homes, and life, Conservatives voted no tonight on this costly credit card budget that gambles away Canadians' futures. And actually, I do like the term credit card budget that they've been using. I think it's decently effective. But again, I think that was a fine thing for the Conservatives to do. There's so many people making a lot out of the gamesmanship that was going on around this vote. This one guy whose name's Millennial Moron says, but this is something many people repeated. If you need more evidence that the budget vote was pure theatrics, Reid and Scheer rushed in to vote no after supposedly experiencing technical problems, but you're not allowed to enter or leave once a vote has started. You can see them hiding behind the curtain during the vote. Okay, is that true? I've heard that might be true, that basically Scott Reid and Andrew Scheer basically stayed behind and they pretended they had technical difficulties online voting, and then they rushed in to go and vote no once it was clear that the budget would pass. I don't care. It's smart politics, guys. I know a lot of people, this is kind of like how the sausage is made type stuff that people don't like to see. Oh, well, it seems like our Conservative MPs, our Conservative Party is less brave. Why aren't they always fighting the Liberals and wanting an election? because they don't want the Liberals to win an election. So sometimes giving them 4 or 5 more months in office is going to make it more likely that they're actually going to beat them than not. But now I want to move over to another post here actually I was just responding to somebody that I know and probably all you know, because I thought it was just a really good post to give a bit of a response to in terms of what this all means. Because I know Mr. Sunshine Baby has been very, very upset with the Conservatives in the aftermath of all this. I will read his post and then I will read my post. I'm not trying to go after him in any way. I respect his opinions. I've agreed with him at times. I disagree with him at times, like now. But I thought that he had maybe the most honest take from somebody who didn't like what the Conservatives did. Because some people said, oh, they're traitors or something like that because 2 of their MPs abstained from the vote. And where I think that he ended up laying out more of a real case rather than just making that very shallow criticism. But Jasper, Mr. Sunshine Baby, says, "What an evening, what a vote. What a roller coaster of emotions. Here are my thoughts. Conservative influencers say that the media and liberals are afraid of Pierre Poilievre. Apparently they're scared, petrified, terrified. If that was true, why not call an election? If everyone is that scared of Pierre Poilievre, then we should be comfortable calling an election. However, we all know that Pierre is weak. Pierre does not stand on conservative values. Because Jenny Byrne et al. Have destroyed the party from the top down since Mark Carney became Liberal leader, we know we'll lose. That's why 2 CPC MPs decided to abstain from opposing the budget, even though the CPC is literally called the official opposition. There is no excuse. The expression goes, silence is agreement. Pierre Poilievre has lost control of his caucus. He allowed red Tories to hold places in the caucus, and that caused him to lose one of his MPs a few weeks ago, Chris D'Entremont. Then Matt Genero was under heavy fire for floor crossing rumors and suddenly declares he had to leave politics due to family concerns, but he said he'd remain a CPC MP till the spring. We all know this is BS. He hasn't shown up for a vote in the past 3 weeks. What does it mean to be a conservative? What do we stand for? Voters do not see a difference between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney because when looking at them on paper and their promises on paper, there are so few. That's why Carney is currently succeeding while Pierre is not, and we have to be honest with ourselves and critically see this. It's time we realize that either Poilievre is the best and the media is terrified of him, hence we should call an election, or Pierre is not who we thought he was and he can't win with him, which is why we don't want an election now, hence we need change. Now, I'm just going to end it there and just go over to my response, because I think there were some aspects of Jasper's post that I found dishonest, especially when he sets up the binary that either the media and the liberals are terrified of Poilievre and we need an election, or he's too weak. Okay, no, that's just not true at all. Here's the thing with politics, is that timing really does matter. And I've talked a lot about this in the video up to this point already. It would have been foolish for the Conservatives to have a Christmas election. You would have looked like the bad guys. It's the winter, it's winter weather in Canada, even though it's technically not officially winter yet. But, it's the winter. People do not want to be having people at their doors campaigning when it's -10 outside. It's just smart to not have the election at that time. I agree. I actually do find it kind of obnoxious when influencers do this thing about, the liberals are terrified of Poilievre. They're absolutely beside themselves, clutching themselves in fear because Poilievre is around the corner. No, I don't think the media or the liberals are scared of Poilievre. I don't think the Conservatives are scared of Mark Carney. In fact, most people in politics tend to have a healthy respect for their opponent's ability to hit hard. And I think that both of them know that if an election was called, even if it was a bad Christmas election, Conservatives could conceivably still win. It's just not a very good chance. And the Liberals would rather have had the Christmas election because they believe that Poilievre and the Conservatives and the NDP are going to have a much better time picking up seats in a spring or summer election. If anything, Carney was probably hoping that this thing wouldn't pass. But I just quickly want to read my post here, and that will probably be it for this video. But I said 2 things can be true at once. One, those claiming the media and liberals are scared of Poilievre are being silly. Both liberals and conservatives could win the next election whenever it is, and each side of the social media hype train do in fact have a healthy respect for each other, for each other's political capabilities. 2, Pierre Poilievre would not win an election if the budget was defeated and an election was held a bit after Christmas. But Sunshine seems to believe this indicates Pierre is uniquely weak. It absolutely doesn't. No party in opposition would benefit from forcing an election over the Christmas season. That would be political suicide to be the party that is seen as having triggered an unnecessary election and disrupting people's holidays. Plus, the door knocking really sucks in the winter, so it's not great for grassroots campaigning. Sometimes you have to give the devil his due in politics, and we are not going to let Mark Carney's, and we are going to have to let Mark Carney's government carry on for a bit longer before an economic update comes out or something of that nature that demonstrates his policies are failing and he needs his government ended. Mark Carney's policies are bad and a lot of his promises have already been broken, but the average voter isn't paying that close attention to what's going on to the extent that they've solidly concluded whether or not they trust Mark Carney still. The budget was a hot mess, but again, it will take a bit more time for people to realize how much of a mess it is, and trying to trigger an election right now and then convince Canadians that the budget was bad during the course of it would be foolish. I think that politics and social media can often descended. I think I just used the wrong word, but it can descend. I looked at my own sentence and I realized I had a wrong word there. But I can just basically end it there. I'll link my post in the description for the rest of you. But I said that like politics can be a lot of algorithmic thinking. Oh, either the Conservatives pass the budget, or the Conservatives defeat the budget, or the Conservatives are weak. Either Poilievre comes and speaks on the ostriches, or he doesn't like freedom. Either this guy does this, or he's that. It's like that's really not how it works oftentimes. Poilievre couldn't speak on behalf of the ostriches because guess what? That ends up voiding the decision in the Supreme Court, because once a political leader starts advocating for something that's in the courts, the judge is either just going to rule against you out of spite, or they actually sometimes have to throw the case out. It's just how it works in Canadian politics. And people trying to basically create their own formula for whether or not the Conservatives are doing a good job without actually taking into account the full picture, I think are doing a disservice to, like, if they have an audience, to their audience. If you're telling your audience that Poilievre is weak because of this budget vote, you don't know enough about politics to say that. I'm just going to say you need to know more about politics before you just condemn people as weak or promote them as being strong. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching the show. I was actually just on Juno News this morning, and that should be out later on in the day as well. I'm on with Alex Brown, so if you also subscribe to Juno News, check out that video when it comes out. But thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, do all that fantastic stuff, and I'll see you all later.